Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the Shaft podcast, to our newly branded show of the Shaft Sports. My name is Erasmus, and I'm happy to present today's episode. In today's episode, I am going to do something very different. I am going to be ranking the top 20 teams within the English Premier League from 1 to 20. And I must tell you guys right from the off, this is a very, very difficult thing to do because what you're going to see is that there are a lot of clubs who could have been placed in many different positions for many different reasons. But I think what I would like to focus on is the reasons why I place them where they are. Um, Feel free to send in your comments if you agree with some of the rankings, and feel free to let us know in the comments who you think will be the top four or the top five teams who will be qualifying into the Champions League next season, depending on the UEFA coefficient. So, without wasting much time, I want to get straight into this. And today, Andy is not here, so it's just going to be me by myself. So make sure that you are keeping me in check. And please make sure that you do subscribe to the channel. Sorry, I almost lost my voice over there. But make sure that you do subscribe to the channel. I think what you're going to see is that the Shaft podcast is improving, and this new show is called the Shaft Sports. And what we want to try and do over here is to ensure that we are converging all of our sports episode in one place where all of our sports lovers and fans would be able to enjoy it. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so this is going to be really, really fun. First of all, I want to look at the teams in 20th, 19th, and then 18th. I think these are the teams that I think would be relegated this season. Obviously, um, obviously, like I said, it's not a very, very easy decision to make. But I have Sunderland in 20th, Leeds in 19th, and then Wolves in 18th. So I think for the last two seasons, we've seen an in and out policy, a revolving door policy for the teams who are promoted from the Championship into the Premier League. I think that's still more likely to happen this year. And when I go into some of my other predictions, you're going to see that I have Burnley very, very close there. And I think they are going to be involved in the relegation scrap. But the reason why I put these specific teams, starting first of all with Sunderland, is because in as much as they have made a lot of new and impressive signings, I think I like most of the signings which they've done, notably McGee from Chelsea, from the Chelsea perspective, but then also Granit Xhaka, who has a lot of Premier League experience, Simon Adingra, who also has a lot of Premier League experience, Habib Diarra, and a lot of other very, very good players. My worry with Sunderland is that coming in from the Championship, they had a very young squad and they look to have come in ahead of schedule, which I think would affect their stability or their ability to be able to stay within the Premier League. Second of all, I think even though the signings that they've brought in are great, there are a number of these signings, key of them, players like Enzo Lefebvre, Habib Diarra, these players are still very, very good players, but we all do know that coming in from a different league into the English Premier League is always very difficult. Some of these players have a style of football where they do love to have the ball, control it. However, if you are Sunderland coming into the Premier League, you should be prepared to not have the ball most of the time. And I've seen very talented players who come into some of these newly promoted sides struggle with the concept of having to deal with loss after loss and see their morale drop down. It feels a bit like a circular argument, but I do think that having all of these new signings, as Nottingham Forest showed a couple of seasons back, can work, but you'd need to be ruthless with it, especially also within the January transfer window. I do not think that there is bandwidth for them to do that, so I think they go right back down. Next is Leeds. Now, Leeds is probably going to finish, probably will be worse than Sunderland, but the reason why I have Leeds also going down is because, and don't get me wrong, they're a fantastic championship side with the manager who was previously with Nottingham Forest, Fark, who plays exceptional. Sorry, not Nottingham Forest, Norwich City, who we've already seen within the Premier League. But every time they have made he made his appearance into the Premier League, we've seen him struggle in terms of his playing style and adapting it to the Premiership. He insists on his playing style. Leeds themselves over the last couple of years have been a free-flowing attacking side. My worry is that that style of playing is not sustainable within the Premier League, especially for newly promoted sides, as there are sides who definitely are much, much better on the ball than Leeds would be. Coupled with that, I don't think they've made a lot of marquee signings. I still think at the moment they are looking to get a striker in. Pirot, who is their current striker, has been fantastic within the championship, but of course this will be his first Premier League season, so you can't trust that he can give it a return on goal. So they are looking to sign a striker. They let Patrick Bamford go, who had sort of like the EPL experience. So I'm not sure how it exactly works out. I think defensively they are really going to struggle this season, as they'll be very, very open. Now in 18th, I have Wolverhampton Wanderers, and I have colleagues who are very, very strong Wolves supporters, so they're perhaps going to kill me for this. But the reason why I have Wolves further down this season is because I think last season they fought within the relegation battle really, really well and came out all good. But a major part of that was because of the new manager, Victor Pereira, who I think was fantastic on the job. But let us remember that there is something also called the new manager bounce. And this is when a new manager comes in, the morale of the squad improves, and therefore the players are able to perform at their maximum. There's a feeling of newness, freshness, and energy, and you are able to motivate them in different ways that causes them to fight. I think when all of the dust settles and we need to see these players perform under normal environments, it may be very, very hard to be able to get some of this motivation up. So I think a large part of, not to take anything away from Victor Pereira, but a large part of his success was based on the new manager bounce. And given them this season to prove that, I think that they are going to struggle. Not only that, I think they have lost some key players in Ryan Aït-Nouri and then also Matthias Cunha, both of whom went to both the Manchester clubs, Aït-Nouri to Man City and Cunha to Man United. And these are key players for them, both in the attacking and the defensive sense, in the sense that both of these players are good in both phases of play. And I am not sure any of the marquee signings which they've brought in. But secondly, in the last part of the season, they did bring in some very, very good players who adapted very quickly. Players like Munetsi, Agbadu, all of these players settled in very, very quickly. But I think what you do find is that when players then have the long stretch of the season to be able to play, when they are settled in within the squad, motivations come different. And I think the ability to sustain those performances is still in question. And therefore, I think they will go down. Now, narrowly escaping relegation for me is Burnley. Now, I do not have special reasons why I put Burnley here. Scott Parker has not covered himself in glory at all in the last couple of seasons, as we've seen him fired from the job in the Premier League a couple of times. But the reason why I have them finishing 17th and barely escaping the relegation scrap is because Scott Parker at least has a lot of Premier League experience. I think a lot of their squad still has a lot of experience from their previous stint in the Premier League. And it does feel like, because they have recent Premier League experience, they are much more likely going to have the structures to adapt quickly in there. Not only so, some of the signings that they've brought in, I think, have been very, very smart. Like Kyle Walker is still a quality right back who not only provides defensive stability and cover, but then also leadership to the entire team. I think some of the players they have at the back, like Steve, did very, very well within the championship. And I think just the general experience that Scott Parker is going to bring most likely will take them out of this. And what they were lacking was a bit of firepower. But if Armando Broja, who was signed from Chelsea, is able to get up to speed, I think that they have the ability to add more goals to their side with the solidity that Ugochukwu is going to bring into midfield given his experience with Southampton in terms of them battling relegation also. Okay. Wow. This is tough, like I already said. But we're going to go down the list. Next on my list is Brentford. Now, the reason I have Brentford very low is although they have historically done well, and we know they have punched above their weights, it still has not been that significant enough that you'd see them in the European sports or anything. They've consistently been mid-table, but we said they are punching above their weights. Now, a large part of why they were punching above their weights was because of the compounding improvements that came as a result of being able to maintain some of their key players like Visa, players like Brian Mbeumo, players like um, uh, Christian Norgard, players like Damsgaard, whom they brought into this, and they brought into the team, and they have been slowly been able to integrate some of these new players who are finding their foot, like Kevin Shade, like Kenan Lewis Porter. My problem is that the man who made them better, Thomas Frank, is out of the door. And I do not have, I think they appointed their set piece coach as the interim replacement. I do not have any problems with that, given that Brentford has run a model where they know that they are going to lose some of their best players and they do like to find replacements. So, for example, when Ivan Toney left, they were able to put in Mbuemo and they only sold when they were ready. This time, I did not think that they had a lot of control over their transfers. I think that them losing Thomas Frank was probably not what they expected, and therefore the new set piece coach, even though he may have been in line, may still be on very, very early. I still think he's going to do well enough because I think the fundamentals of the club are still very, very strong enough for them to be able to survive the drop. But I still do think they will struggle. Not only so, they lost the strength in the middle of the park in terms of Christian Norgard, who's brought in a lot of leadership. I think they still do have a lot of the old guys at the back, so I still think they are going to be defensively solid. But I worry about them in attack, especially also if they lose Visa to uh, Newcastle United. And I think they have brought in a new striker from the South American League who is very, very good. Thiago is very, very good. My worry is for new signings coming into the Premier League, it's usually very, very competitive. Even if you are good, would you be able to keep your head and show your quality week in, week out? I think it may take some time. Cool. So West Ham United, I have in the 15th position. And Sam, don't kill me on this. But I think that this West Ham United, we are going to see improvement in the play. Last season was horrible. I think we've seen Wan-Bissaka turn up for them. They signed a new left back in Diop. I don't think Emerson was too bad, but I think Diop is a quality signing. I think from Slavia Prague, where he had a lot of attacking returns. So we'll be talking about FPL later. Keep him in your teams. Where I think they probably are going to struggle is in the middle of the pack and also in attack. Currently, a bulk majority of their goals is provided by Jared Bowen, whom I think his injury record is not the greatest. I think there have been points in time where he has been missing from the team, but he has grown to be their forefront attacker. So I think the key thing over here will be keeping him fit. But I think that an over-reliance on a winger, second striker of a sort for as your main source of goals is really, really dangerous, especially after the loss of Kudus, who was good for them 2 seasons ago. Nicholas Fulkrug, I have no questions of, but last season he couldn't stay fit. And even when he is fit, is he the striker who is going to give you like your 10, 12, 15 goals within a season? I think he's yet to prove it. I think he's known as this streaky striker. Even when he was within the Bundesliga, he's a much, much, much older forward now, and having to lead the line consistently, I have issues with. The backup striker whom they brought is Callum Wilson. I'm yet to see if the two of them play together, but for now, it does look like it is just one or the other. But he has not played in a long while, doesn't also have a great injury record. My fear is that any of these 3 attacking players has an injury and is over. In the middle of the pack, I think they are also lacking a bit. Paquetá is a very, very good player. However, he's more attacking minded. And I think they've brought in Frederick Potts and some of the young guys from the academy who are really, really good. Like, you should see some of these West Ham young players. They're really, really good. My problem is that it will take some time for these guys to find their feet. With young players, you're still likely going to find some errors or some mistakes which will most likely come out. And therefore, it is important that you give them time. For this reason, I do not think they go above 15th. But next, 14th, we have Fulham. Fulham is a very boring club. I have to be very, very honest. They're boring. They don't have rivals. I think they have some rivals, but like Chelsea, but come on, that's not even a rivalry. They don't have rivals. They've not bought new players. They've not sold the old players. I just think like plain vanilla 14th maybe looks good. But that is not to understate the job that Marco Silva has done within the league. And I think that Fulham, which was a yo-yo club, now becoming a mainstay club, is a statement of ambition, and it's a work. It shows the work, or the massive work, which has gone into that football club. But I think not being able to make signings to improve the squad which was at times very, very good, at times quite lacking. I think they will understand silver ball much, much more now, but you do need the quality within the English Premier League. That being said, they still do have some quality players. I'm keen to see what Muniz would likely do. I think they have two of some of the better nines within the league. I'm keen to see what Robinson will do, who is currently out injured, but I still think there's a lot to do within the squad. Next, without wasting much time, 13th, Crystal Palace. Now, this is a team who just beat Liverpool in the Community Shield, and therefore I shouldn't be putting them in 13th. But let me tell you why. I think that they do have a very good squad, and I think Oliver Glasner has done a good job in being able to assemble the unit to be able to take down any big team. I think they are the killer of giants for me. But being able to stay consistent, being able to stay in the league or perform well in the league requires a level of consistency, which I think has a huge demand on the squad. The number of players who are able to pull some of these magic moments, I think players like Eze, Sa, what's the name of their striker? Oh my God, this is embarrassing. Jean-Philippe Mateta. Yes. And I think calling on them to perform week on week without having suitable backups who can come in and then do the work is very dangerous. Of course, they have Eddie Nketiah, who is currently out injured, but has not been able to show the consistency and quality which we know him for. Kamada, who was brought into the squad, still does not seem to know where his position is. And there's still the possibility that they lose as players like Eze, McGahey, who have been crucial for them at the back. I still do think they have some of the young signings, like the guy who scored the penalty in the last minute, players like Chris Richards, Lacroix, who have come in at the back, who are solid. So they do have a good line of young talents willing to take over. But my second problem with them is that they are playing in Europe this season, UEFA Conference League, and Chelsea was there last season. And I'm going to tell you, the trips are long. You'll be sitting in a bus for very long hours. Not the bus, maybe. That's a bit dramatic. But you would be going on long trips to Azerbaijan, to Moldova, to the hinterlands of Europe, to some very, very, very far places in Europe. And you have to make the trip back, and it's on a Thursday, and to continue to play on a Saturday, to play on a Sunday, or even on a Monday, will consistently take a toll on these players. So I think the size of the squad, the fact that they lose a few more players and combining it with Europe sets them back a bit. I even have a feeling they drop back further than this, especially if they lose Eze, but currently they haven't. So we're keen to see. The team I have in 12 is in a much similar position, Nottingham Forest. And I probably had them lower till I saw the signings that they did yesterday. I think they signed 4 youngsters, right? They signed Makati, Omari Hutchinson, and two other young players who are like, for their age class, are world beaters. And I think looking at their performance within preseason, it's been nothing to write home about. Like, they've just scored 1 goal in the entire of the preseason. They've lost Anthony Elanga. They nearly lost Morgan Gibbs White. And I do think even though they try to play down the situation, this is still likely going to have a hit on the morale of the squad, and especially for Morgan Gibbs White. I think it's going to take him some time for him to come back, as we've seen several reports where he's had to miss training due to personal issues and then stuff like that. I also think Chris Wood as a striker, we know him. He's a good striker, but last season he massively overperformed his XG. I think that it is more likely going to come back to normal now. So they need a place to find more goals. And they have signed Igor Jesus, and I've seen them play two up top. But in this Premier League, two up top, all the best. But no, but to be fair, I see with them playing the 4-4-2 now, I see Omari Hutchinson playing like the Elanga role, and of course Callum Hudson-Odoi, if he can stay fit throughout the season on those sides. And in the middle of the pack, they have brilliant talent in Anderson and Yates. And I think with the addition of Makati in there, who maybe can play as a 10, or maybe Morgan Gibbs White in support, I think at some point that formation is going to change and Igor Jesus is going to see the bench a bit of times. But maybe that provides additional support to Chris Wood and they improve. But remember also that they are playing in an European competition, which means that the squad depth needs to be great. I think defensively they are still going to be solid, but they are going to need a lot more than counter-attacks, which worked very well for them last season. But towards the end of the season, you realize that teams knew how to play against them. And therefore, I'm keen to see what Nuno Espirito Santos, I love to mention that name, Nuno Espirito Santos, is likely going to bring to the squad. All right. In 11th, I have Bournemouth. And Bournemouth is my darling club. Like, I'm actually even wearing their colors today. Bournemouth is my darling club. I really, really love Bournemouth. And I love Adani Iraola and what he's doing at the club. I think he's revolutionizing football even from where he is. And if you look at the Bournemouth players, they're some of the fittest, the fastest. And I think they're going to surprise a lot of teams within the league this season. However, they have lost significant numbers at the back. I think they recently signed this player from, I can't remember his name, from the French league, Diakite, who is very, very good. He's been very, very good in the French league, one of the best defenders within the league. So hopefully he comes in to bolster the squad. But I always say that for the EPL, you need a level of adaptation period. Although it's much less of an adaptation period required for players who come from the French league compared to the others. But we still have to wait to see, don't we? So I have Bournemouth finishing in the 11th position. I think they're also losing Django Ouattara, who, to be honest, was not always a starter. But I think when Ivan Nilsson got injured, he stepped in really, really well as a striker, and they're going to lose him to Brentford, which probably improves Brentford's position, but we already put them there already, haven't we? Okay, cool. Now to the top 10. And this is going to be very, very challenging because as I was putting this down, I put a team in 10th. I'm like, I skip a team. I'm like, no way they're going, no way they are this deep, right? And then you realize that there's a stack of teams in those positions and you are not sure who to put there. But if you're ready, let's go. 10th position, Everton. And I do think that we are in for a shocker with regards to Everton because under Moyes, we saw that they massively improved them. Moyes is someone who improves his team. Year on year, his team is going to improve. Seem to be very, very defensively solid. And I think that he used to have this vibe about him in terms of his attacking players and that he defends a lot and they do not attack. But I think that we've seen that he can score a lot of goals. Not only that, he has a lot of talented players right now who work really hard. Eleman Ndiaye, they've signed this guy, KDH, Kenan Dewsbury Hall from Chelsea. We've given them a very good player at a discount price. They've managed to sign Jack Grealish, which I think is a massive signing. Players like Dwight McNeil are still at the club who still provide a lot of quality, and therefore I think there's going to be a lot of depth for them. They are not playing in Europe this year. They are playing in a new stadium, which can sort of like boost them. And we already saw with Newcastle, once the money came in and the Fried King Group's money, now that's in like American owners, they are willing to invest and pump the money. That being said, on the other side, we have also seen that building new stadiums sometimes has an effect on the team. Sometimes it does affect the atmosphere a bit. Goodison Park, which I have mentioned for the 50th time, I live 5 minutes away from Goodison Park. In a way, I was happy when they left because there's less traffic on my road, but it's a bit sad because I can't speak to it that much. That being said, I think sometimes the new stadium can bring a change in the atmosphere. It can be positive, it can be negative, it can take some time getting used to it, amongst a number of things. But you are quite sure that they have ambitions to be able to compete in Europe, which will require them finishing eighth at the minimum. And I think that they are going to maybe try and then do that. But I think that this season, even at the last point of preseason, um, Moyes was calling out for more players, and the signings are coming in too late to allow them to gel. But I think that they are still going to do a good job. They have good squad depth since they are not in Europe to be able to rotate, and I think that they will get better as it progresses. But I think 10th is where they finish, and there are some of the picks that I just think I'm going to regret, and Everton is one of them. I would not be surprised if I see them finishing in some of those European spots. Good. Ninth. Oh my God, and this is where it gets really, really controversial. Newcastle. Newcastle. They are going to miss out on Europe totally. I think people underplay how much the Isak saga likely has on players. And in general, what I've seen, I've watched the Premier League for over 20 years now. How old am I? Okay. I might be revealing my age, but I've watched the Premier League for a very long time, and the feeling or the mood with which you enter into the Premier League is almost as important as the tactics or the players that you go in with. And I think the mood in which the Newcastle is entering the season with the Isak situation is not the very best. I think that there have been times where you've seen that Eddie Howe is trying his very, very best to manage the situation. And I do think that he has done a fantastic job. But on the other side, it has affected the quality of signings which they've been able to bring in. They've still brought in some good guys, Anthony Langa, Malik Piao, who are obviously going to improve the squad, and they still do have a strong squad. But I think that them also having to balance this with Champions League football, your inability to bring in the high quality or caliber of players which is required to be able to rotate the squad and compete in two competitions would have devastating effects on them. My theory is that the reason why I have them ninth and missing out is that they are perhaps given this new format where they will have a lot of games in St. James Park, which is their stronghold. They are going to get through a lot of these games. They are going to power through a lot of these games. But it is going to affect their Premier League consistency and their performance. And for me, there's a point at which they are going to balance trying to do well there, because don't forget, Newcastle also has ambitions to compete. So within the Premier League, they're going to try and then also compete. But I think they get off to quite a bad, they just need one bad result against Aston Villa. And from there, it's downhill. The opening fixtures also don't look great, and it will take some time to pick themselves up. But they could surprise me. They could surprise me. But I think even if they do, I don't see them finishing plus 2 places. I don't see them finishing, say, beyond 7th. But I think for now, I have them at the 9th position. All right. 8th, Brighton. Now, Brighton is a very, very good team. It has a very, very good squad. Last year, they narrowly missed out on Europe. I think this year, they make it. They lost Joao Pedro, which obviously is a big loss and a big plus to Chelsea. But I do think that they still have a very good squad. And I think more and more, the squad that Fabian Hessler inherited was more in the deserving mode. I think this season he would have more of a chance to put his imprint on the squad. And you could see that he likes to go for players who can play multiple positions across the field. Some of the players they have can play anywhere. They play 9, they play midfield, they play defense. A player like Jorginho Rute, we all saw last season, like gave Joao Pedro. And Joao Pedro is a very good player, but he gives Joao Pedro one heck of a time. And this season, we're going to see him play in a more advanced position. He's also one of those players who drops into midfield, able to play really well. They have players like Kadioglu who can play left back, play midfield, play attack. So I think that we are going to see more of those patterns and interesting football from them. And Brighton always gives us that. And I always like to watch them in terms of the tactical dynamics that they are always able to bring to play. But I do think that um, they are, it's still going to be very, very difficult, right? It's still going to be very, very difficult to compete with the top seven over here, who, as I'm going to show you, have massively spent and also bolstered their squad. So I think there's the quality of the squad will just not be good enough to be able to um, uh, compete or achieve a much higher finish. Seventh, I have a respectable finish for Tottenham Hotspur, which is slightly much better than their 16th finish last year. I'm wondering if you are proud of yourselves. Hmm? But I think they improved this year. I think they improved massively this year. And I think that what they were able to show within the Super Cup final, the Super Cup final against PSG tells you what this squad can do. But it also tells you of the weakness, right? That when you need players to come in to replace that first 11 is going to be very difficult, and you can see why they are still chasing players like Eberici, Eze, and co. And I think that in as much as they started off the transfer window very well, they have not completed it very, very well. The hope is that Dominic Solanke comes back in full force. He's still quite injured. I don't think Richarlison is him. He's not him at all. He can do a job, but he's not him at all. He's not going to take them to the next level. But I think that Thomas Frank is a good manager enough to get them seventh and to get them back into Europe. And I think that's what it's going to do. But let's not forget that Tottenham is also competing in the Champions League. So if you are already having issues with squad depth, this is still likely going to show up at the tail end of the season when this happens. I do think that this is one of the teams. There's a world where I swap Tottenham for Newcastle, and I still think that's a huge possibility. But I've finally gone with this just because of the coach, just because Thomas Frank is able to improve players and is able to improve his squad. He's found new dynamic ways of adding goals to the Tottenham team. We saw what they did with set pieces, and they have huge centre backs like Kevin Danso. Like, I didn't know he had that in him. Van de Ven, Christian Romero. And if these guys can stay fit, I think they'll be defensively solid. But can they play 36, 38 games and still go ahead to be doing it in the Champions League? I don't know. All right, in sixth place, I have Aston Villa. Aston Villa is still competing in Europe. They have a good squad. They've not lost most of the players except the ones who came on loan. But I think that Unai Emery also knows how to get the best out of his squad. They have one of the most potent strikers within the league in Oli Watkins, who has been on banging form. And I think this year he'll be able to continue to do so. I think they have a wonderful signing or backup in Gesand who can play Geshand. Okay, who can play anywhere across the front line. And I think that's really, really good for them and will provide depth and cover. But do not underestimate Aston Villa. The players are still really, really good. These are the players who played them into the Champions League a couple of seasons ago. I still think they are likely to repeat that. Tillemans and co. And I think at the back, they still do have options with the recovery of Tyrone Mings. I think they have enough defensive cover. And for me, they finish sixth. Okay. Now, the top five places, and depending on the UEFA coefficients, the teams that are going to get into the Champions League. Okay. In fifth place, Manchester United. Now, hold on. I know people like to banter Manchester United, and I'm one of those. But I think genuinely they've had one of the best windows of the summer, especially if they can add Carlos Baleba. So it's not Baliba. It's not Baliba. It's Baleba. Okay. So if they can add Carlos Baleba and Gianluigi Donnarumma to the squad, I think they have the best. They've done the best signings, or like they have the best window together with another team who I'm going to call out later. But I do think that without the midfield signing, and they seem hell bent on bringing in Baleba, without bringing him in, I think it may affect. I think part of that, the reason why I have them here is because I do think they are going to bring a midfield signing in. I definitely do think so. And I think that once that midfield improves, we are going to see improvement there. And the reason I have them fifth is because their major issue last season, apart from the defensive worries, maybe the defensive worries was quite overrated in that sense because they were quite decent, kept themselves in games. Um, they were able to have certain moments, but the attacking quality was just not there. But this season, attacking firepower all over the pitch in the two tens with Mateus Cunha and then Brian Mbuemo, from the wing back with Ahmad. I think up front now with Sesko, and if Hoyland still stays or Zexi still stays, the cover that he's able to bring, they have no European football. Amorim is a smart manager, is a good manager who, given the entire week by week, would be able to prepare for games. And we saw it last season, even with a depleted squad, he was able to go to Anfield and get a result. So week on week, I think he would be able to grind out results. I still think there are going to be issues and they are going to lose the odd game here and there. But given the level of quality that's on the pitch now, I expect them not to lose some of the games which they lost last season, like some of the Ipswich performances or some of the Wolves performances. I think all of those things go away, and I think it puts them in a prime spot to compete in Europe. Like Manchester United needs to be playing in Europe. That is where they belong, as simple as that. In fourth place, I have Manchester City. Now, I think last season was an anomaly for Pep Guardiola. We'd never seen that before, where they lost game after game. But it was not just them losing the games, it was the manner in which they were losing some of these games. Absolutely atrocious. And I do think that they have resolved some of these issues with the players that they have signed. It was clear that they needed a squad rebuild. But what comes with that is that this is not the same Man City team that won 3 Premier League titles in a row. This is a very, very different Man City team with a lot of new players who need to come in and play in order to prove themselves. And I think there's been questions over some of the signings that they've made where they've not done that. Like Doku is yet to do that. Savinho yet to do that, and is probably even leaving the club. But I do think that if they manage to sign Rodrigo also, they bolster their attacking options. But these players need to play to prove themselves. I still do think that some of the defensive frailties have not gone away, which is a bit surprising because it's not just to do with the quality of the defense that they have, although a lot of times we've seen them in the more in the hospital than at home. They have like 6 or 7 center backs like Akanji, Ruben Diaz, Ake, Gvardiol. By Pep's insistence to play them in different positions and to prefer high attacking football, but he's yet to achieve that midfield stability and the defensive balance which is needed. And I still think they'll be liable to a lot of these counter attacks. And with Rodri out again, I still think they'll be soft in the middle. They've kept players like Kovacic, who I still think will be playing a lot of minutes anyway. They've brought in Ryan Diaz, who is good, but he looks to be better going forward than just staying behind. Nico Gonzalez has not proven to be the Rodri replacement as we thought. So I still think there's a lot of work to be done over there. I think Ryan Ait-Nouri, even though he's a good defender, sort of helps more in bolstering the attacking options rather than being defensively solid. And I still don't know what's going on in the goalkeeping department. They are going after Gianluigi Donnarumma, which is a bit strange given that the reason PSG are letting him go is because he's not good with his feet. And Guardiola requires his goalkeepers to be good with his feet. But I think maybe he's coming to terms with the fact that they are going to dominate the ball most of the times. They are going to be good with the build up anyway. The problem is with the shot stopping and the one-on-ones. And there's no better keeper in the world with one-on-ones than Gianluigi Donnarumma. So I'm keen to see what he does. And obviously, Trafford is bringing enough cover over there. So I do think that they'll do well. However, I have the team that I have in third position, which is Chelsea, only because I think that they have been able to find much, much more consistency with their squad than Man City. And I think that what they've already shown from the Club World Cup and the feeling that is going into the season has largely been super, super positive. So for me, that is a really, really good thing. The light has gone off, which probably means that I need to be wrapping up. But there's still time for the big review. Okay. So I think that Chelsea is going to do well. Enzo Maresca has shown that he can go into games with a good game plan and stifle teams. And I'll do some more in-depth analysis once the season starts on some of these teams in the top four, how they are playing. But what Enzo Maresca loves is to play a boring game, right? He just goes in, goes for the quick goal, keeps the ball, keeps you guessing, like make sure that you don't enjoy the game. So I think where they are going to be found lacking is still with some of the low blocks. And I worry a little bit about the defensive balance with them losing Levi Colwell. But I still do think that once the transfer window is open, there's still opportunity to improve the defense. And I still do think that once a couple of their players like Badiashile and Levi, what's his name, Fofana come back, they are going to bolster the defense. So the defense is going to be much, much more robust and solid than what we think it to be. And I think with enough cover with Caicedo, Lavia being able to come back with Andre Santos and Darius Sugo coming in, I do think that they're able to provide enough cover in front of this defense and be able to control games and then win, right? But I still do not think they get better than these top two. And I think the title race is really between these two. And telling you number two will tell you who I think is number one. But I think you are more interested in my reasons than just telling you who they are. I have Liverpool in second place. Now, I have contemplated over this for very long. And I do think that people are failing to notice that winning the title is hard, but winning it twice in a row is even harder. And there's not a lot of teams who have been able to achieve it. And I think what Slot has done is brilliant. And I think for the things which are under his control, he does really, really well. But there are still a lot of things which would not be under his control, like signing a lot of new players who still need time to gel within the squad. There's no way you are able to rush that process. And I still do think they are going to play really, really well, but no, also having a proper DM. And I know Gravenbach has done a very, very good job. But sometimes you see him having to struggle to sometimes intercept some of these balls and dealing with the counter attacks, especially now that they've brought in Florian Wirtz, which means not less bodies, but less physicality within the midfield. Of course, it helps them with the low blocks, but makes them susceptible to the counter attacks. Like Van Dijk, there are concerns about Van Dijk and Mo Salah, if they can still do it at their ages. I do think there's going to be a bit of a decline. And I think that the attacking returns for Mo Salah is going to spread throughout the squad. But how do you spread defensive balance? I still do think that they are susceptible to the odd counters here or there, high scoring games for them. And over time, I think they would be able to achieve that level of stability. What I anticipate they do is they overwhelm teams with their attacking strength and then maybe sit back and try and hit them on. And they have the players to be able to do so. And to be honest, probably the reason I don't have them first is because Isak is not yet in. If he was in and training with the squad, it's probably first for me. Okay, to Arsenal, right? So Arsenal would win the Premier League according to Erasmus. The reason why I have Arsenal winning the Premier League is simple. I think that they have a coach who has been here much, much longer, has been in a lot of title race, and recognize that last season it wasn't much of a title challenge. Like it was just Liverpool coasting. And this year they'll need to battle it out. And I think Arsenal is more competent in terms of being able to do that. We all know what we are going to get from them. And we all know that the only thing that was missing was the striker position. And not to even say that they didn't score a lot of goals. They did. But the only thing I see against Arsenal is their mood or atmosphere within the club. If they start very well, I think they go ahead to finish very well. If they start bad, I think that it might be a challenge because this season, there's no room for a lot of slip-ups. But I've looked at Gyökeres and he looks good, mate. He looks good. Like, we will hate watch as much as we want. And there'll be some games where we'll get them. But he looks good. He looks like he's the striker who will get them at least 10 to 15 goals in a season. And once he does that, Arsenal is winning the league. And I think with some of the signings that they've brought in, it's been very, very smart. He gives them different things. So Madueke out there on the left gives them a new option, which they didn't have last season. I think that they've been able to provide solid defensive cover now with Mosquera. If Kivi also still stays, like if Califury stays fit, that's a defense that's strong now, even more boosted. And I think within the midfield, Zubimendi has proven to be very, very good. Although I still think some of the physicality is missing, it's still being provided in a lot of different areas on the pitch. And I think they are the kind of team that they don't need to play beautiful to win and are able to sustain a level of pressure and consistency for a very, very long period of time. And therefore, they would be able to take it to the end. I think that their European run, which we'll probably talk about, might be affected as a result of this. But I think this year, this is where they are going to put most of their focus. And I think that they just have the resilience and already set system. They are good and ready to go. Like it was just a plug and play for the striker and they are good to go. So I do think that they win the Premier League, which I would hate to see, and I wish this would not happen, but I need to do this objectively with the facts that I see. All right. That was very long. That was very tough. But thank you all so much for staying with me to the end of this episode. And these are my predictions for the English Premier League for the 2025-2026 season. Thank you all so much. Subscribe to the podcast and please leave your comments below. We really want to hear from you. Thank you for the support. You guys continue to watch. You guys continue to like. But as much as possible, we also want to hear from you. Tell us what next you want us to cover. Tell us what you think about our logo. Tell us what you think about our new jingle. We really love to hear from you. Thank you all so much. And I'm going to see you next time. Cheers.